of the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Monmouth County. For 29 years, UUCMC, I know, right? UUCMC has partnered with the Monmouth Center for World Religions and Ethical Thought to value and promote and celebrate religious liberty, interfaith dialogue, and ethical practices. And this congregation itself centers its mission in hearing and valuing the stories of all persons. And so it's especially good to participate in today's Shanti lecture, centered on the Black press's stewardship of democracy. And just so you know, each week at 10:30, we share a time of worship here at UU Monmouth County, with worship defined as a shaping concern for all that is of worth. And we want all of you to know that no matter your faith path, you have a home here with us. Our diversity is our strength. Glad to be here at this beautiful event. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Rao Andabolu. I'm one of the two co-presidents of MCWRET. My senior co-president has not been able to make it today. She's been under the weather a little bit. But she does send her love and her welcome. And she also mentioned that this is the first time that she has missed any of the MCWRET meetings. So thank you, Stevie, for all your contributions to the MCWRET. Reverend Craig, thank you very much for your hospitality, having MCWRET for the past 29 years, as you mentioned, and welcome to the 23rd Shanti lecture. I think I'll follow what I say by turning my phone off so that I don't get any messages or I don't disturb you. So the word Shanti means peace in Sanskrit. And the Shanti lectures have been instituted from 1996 on by Roshan and Eri Chadas and Subhash and Subhash Chadha, with a dedicated endowment in honor of their parents, Ram and Shanti Chadha, and hence the name Shanti lecture for. And for that, MCWRET is forever thankful to you, thankful to the family of Chadas. The original purpose of Shanti was to provide great understanding of Asian religions and other religions of lesser known religions in the United States. But since then, the emphasis has changed so that we are now talking more about cross-cultural linkage and cross-cultural understanding. So, in the spirit of the cross-cultural understanding, let me give a prayer in Sanskrit with a little meaning at the end of it. So, Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The meaning of it basically is that let's all work together, let's all be together, let's all be nourished together, let us work together with great vigor. May our studies illumine our intellects, and may we not hate each other. Such very high principled prayer for all of us to be working together is really important, I thought, at this point. Let me just let you know that this is what's called Earth Room, And then the next door on the right is the community room, and there will be refreshments at the end of the talk, and you're all welcome to it. And out in the corridor, you'll find a basket which you can, any of your donations will be very gladly accepted, and that will be used to defray the costs that we have incurred. So at this time, I request all the members of the board of MCWRET in this room to please stand up and recognize themselves. These are the people whose work for the past many years, nay, decades, has really brought where MCWRET is today. So thank you all again. As a customary to the Shanti lecture, we hear some readings from the Chadha family. And today we are graced by the presence of Arun and Kelly Chadha, and I request them to please do the reading.
My name is Arun Chadha, and I am the son of Roshan and Ellen. My wife Kelly is introduced. We'll be reading 2 short passages on behalf of the Chadha family. Kelly will be starting with reading in an ancient Sanskrit poem.
Thank you. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the realities and truths of existence. The joy of growth, the splendor of action, the glory of power. For yesterday is but a memory, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a memory of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day.
And I'll be reading a Sanskrit prayer, or a snippet of it, that my father has been reciting and continues to recite on a daily basis. He's been saying it for years, as long as I can remember. Obviously, he's not here today, so I'm reading it on his behalf. It's called the Gayatri Mantra. It's a Sanskrit mantra that has been chanted for thousands of years. It was written down during the Vedic period, which is about 1500 BC, and it's considered to be one of the oldest known and most powerful mantras. It's said to contain all the knowledge of the universe. It goes, let your wisdom fall on my mind like the rays of the morning sun, so that we can do your good works. Let there be peace everywhere. Om Shanti Shanti.
Thank you.
Before I introduce our Shanti speaker, I'm pleased to say that again, after 3 years, this is our first live Shanti event since 2019. Due to COVID, so that's it. Praise the Lord for that. Today we will not have a live streaming. The event is being recorded and will be posted on the Mama Center YouTube channel at a later date. Today's presentation, The Black Press, Stewards of Democracy, is our third Shanti event in a row with a focus on the issue of race in America. Yes, we believe it's important. As an aside, I first met Gilda 5 or 6 years ago, about a half a mile from here at the Lincroft Presbyterian Church, just down the road at an event on race, of which Gilda, Sid, and myself were some of the speakers. I actually focused on the Stand Up for the Other pledge, which many of you may be familiar with. Since then, I've gotten to know Gilda better, and a commitment to Gilda, which I haven't stated but she knows, is I look for every opportunity to support her in her work to educate us on our history so that we can move forward in a more positive direction. Gilda is an award-winning journalist and an author of 3 books. She's executive director of the T. Thomas Fortune Foundation in Red Bank. I assume you'll tell people a little about that. Okay. She's also a teacher at Brookdale, and I've gotten to know her on the Brookdale campus as well. And she led the grassroots effort not too many years ago to save this important building in Red Bank and dedicate it to its current purpose. T. Thomas Fortune, I'll just allude, was an important black journalist, which was the subject of today, and an activist and an important influencer in the late 19th and 20th century. And one aside about education, we can all learn. When I learned about T. Thomas Fortune from Gilda, who was a journalist, didn't know about T. Thomas Fortune. So it's amazing what we don't know, and what we do know we can put to good use. Lastly, Gilda was named Humanitarian of the Year by the Monmouth County Human Relations Commission in 2017. She was also one of the honorees of the American Association of University Women for its Women of Achievement Award in 2018. It is now my pleasure to yield the floor to Gilda Rogers. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here on this beautiful afternoon. I want to say Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. All right? I come in peace, my body, mind, and spirit, okay? I see many of my friends out here in the room, and those of you who know me and have ever received a written word from me, a small note, anything that I have sent of language, I sign it. The last thing I sign off is peace. Because it is so important. I'm grateful, and I want to spread this peace because it's such a beautiful thing when you can live in peace, but we need the world itself, right, to be in that kind of spirit. So thank you, Joe, and to the board of the Madhav for extending this invitation to me. It really is an honor for me to be here. Anytime I get the opportunity to talk about love and bringing people together and T. Thomas Fortune, I am a willing participant, okay? So I'd like to start off by saying my grandmother had no real profession, right? She took care of the children and nurtured them. She was the neighborhood babysitter, caring for up to, at times, 7 to 10 children at a time. Many of them would stay with us during the week and only go to their homes on the weekend. Their children were well taken care of, loved, fed, and disciplined. And I know this firsthand because I was her 10-year-old apprentice. helping her and learning at a young age that a lot of kids would not be my future. So I'm thinking to myself, as I'm going through these day-to-day rituals with my grandmother and taking care of children, this will not be my future, all right? And boy, was I wrong. I was so wrong. Clearly, when I look back now, I know that my grandmother was doing a tremendous service for the parents of those children and for our community. However, I stand here today before you as her wildest dream. I've been teaching young people for over 20 years, and today I teach African American history at Brookdale Community College, and there is nothing I enjoy more than being with young people. What they do today is crucial for what takes place tomorrow. They are the current and current events. Unlike past generations, young people today are not going along with the past. They are bold, and some might say brazen, and they're taking a stand. While things may appear one way, I remain hopeful for the future because the students I am honored to spend my time with on a daily basis. This semester, my class consists of 33 students, and that's a large class. However, what's important is that more white students are electing to take African American history. The learning synergy that is taking place in my class now is exhilarating because these students are finally being introduced to one another up close and personally for the first time. I think we forget that America is a young nation compared to others that's existed in antiquity that's comparable to ours, right? In 2026, this nation will celebrate its 250th anniversary. So yes, I remain hopeful because we're still growing as human beings. However, it was the spirit of an illustrious group that took a stand to right the wrongs of an uneven, younger America, and that was the black press. The T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center became a designated National Historic Landmark in 1976 by the U.S. Department of Interior during the country's bicentennial. And it was designated a National Historic Site for Journalism by the Society of Professional Journalists in 2019. So the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments of the Constitution, the living document that governs the Republic and America's democracy, define the life of T. Thomas Fortune, who was born into slavery in 1856 in Marietta, Florida. He bore witness to the United States' abject failure to protect its black citizens after the short-lived Reconstruction period. Unwavering in his fight for social justice and equality for his race, as a publisher, writer, and political organizer, Fortune helped empower a group of freedom fighters and trailblazers in the form of newspaper publishers, journalists, didactic thinkers, opinionated writers, and photojournalists who unleashed a political tidal wave of activism on America. Collectively known as the Black Press, they spoke truth to power and changed the racial dynamic and social landscape of the country. The black press held the United States accountable to its constitutional promises of freedom, liberty, and justice for all. This is their story. I quote, "We wish to plead our cause. Too long have others spoken for us. Too long has the public been deceived by misrepresentations in things that concern us dearly." End quote. These are the words of Samuel E. Cornish and John Russwurm, who were publishers of the Freedom Journal, the first black newspaper established in the United States in 1827. Their publication started a chain reaction, and hundreds of black newspapers were published. Their collective voices helped free black people from the political minefield of chattel slavery, and what ensued was the valiant march toward democracy in this nation. T. Thomas Fortune used his newspaper, the New York Age, to speak out against white supremacy and imperialism. A. Philip Randolph, who published The Messenger, fought for the rights of black workers, specifically the Pullman car porters, who were instrumental in distributing early black publications. Randolph also organized the first black labor union, the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and set in motion what culminated into the 1963 March on Washington. Fortune and Randolph used powerful rhetoric to demand the rights of black people and to humanize the struggles that were often ignored by the mainstream white press. Randolph, A. Philip Randolph, should be a name that every household knows. Amen. Yes. A. Philip Randolph has a connection with the Parker family in Red Bank, particularly Dr. James Parker Sr. They were friends from their childhood days in Florida. They actually attended Cookman Institute together. A. Philip Randolph was a year older than Dr. Parker. And Dr. Parker actually worked as a Pullman car porter, and that's how he paid his way to go to medical school, to go to college, and to attend medical school at Howard University. So that's the history in the house there at the Cultural Center, all right? Du Bois, James Weldon Johnson, these names that you know, wrote columns for Fortune's newspaper, and Fortune was a ghostwriter for many of Booker T. Washington's writing, including The Negro Problem. Revolutionary women like Ida B. Wells fiercely opposed lynching and worked with prominent figures like Fortune, Frederick Douglass, and W.E.B. Du Bois to advocate for full civil rights of black people. Ethel Payne, called the First Lady of the Black Press, joined Alice Dunnigan to become the first black women included in the White House press corps, where they fought for prevailing issues like education, poverty, and housing. Black magazines like Ebony and Essence featured the rich culture, fashion, and talent of the black community. Melba Tolliver, a black broadcast news anchor, took a defiant stance against the network, ABC, when she refused to cover her afro hairstyle to report on the wedding of Richard Nixon's daughter, Tricia, in 1971. Tolliver's rebellious spirit and Payne's persistence would inspire journalists like myself after them to proudly be their authentic selves in mainstream media. Dr. Khalil Gibran Muhammad, a Harvard professor of history, of race, and public policy at the Kennedy School at Harvard University. He was our speaker for our Juneteenth lecture, T. Thomas Fortune lecture. And he said, and I quote, "The time is now for massive resistance because the stakes could not be higher. On top of direct assaults on democracy with the surge of voter suppression laws, racial gerrymandering, election result denials, more than half the states are imposing new forms of legal segregation in education by restricting what can be taught about race, racism, gender, and sexuality in the nation's classroom," end of quote. We can no longer idly sit by while the democratic values and the fabric of the nation unravel. The Black press provided the blueprint which achieved tremendous outcomes like the Double V campaign of the 1940s. It put the spotlight on Black patriotism and what that meant to Black servicemen in the United States Armed Forces who fought with valor abroad only to be disrespected as Americans on the home front. The journalist Wallace Terry, captured in the book Bloods, an oral history of the Vietnam War by Black veterans, the dark side of the war, and its effect on Black America. Through his storytelling, post-traumatic stress disorder was finally recognized by the federal government as a medical disability. The Black press, Stewards of Democracy, delves into the past to reignite a fighting spirit to uphold the legacy of the times when pen to paper profoundly changed our futures and the course of America for the better. The press continues to shape the nation's freedoms and is known as the fourth estate of the three branches of government. A call to action has been given as our democracy hangs in the balance. As you experience this exhibit that will be opening at the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center on October 28th, it will be a permanent exhibit, so it will be there, all right? We open on October 28th, Phase 1. Phase 1 of the exhibit is called Pioneers of the Black Press. And that's when you will meet those individuals like T. Thomas Fortune, A. Philip Randolph, and a host of others, W.E.B. Du Bois, William Monroe Trotter, all right? Charles Johnson. It's a number of names that I'm sure some of you know and may not know. And then Phase 2 opens in February. Phase 2 will be called Shaping Black Identity and Black Influence on Mass Media. Included in Pioneers of the Black Press because we really want people when they come to visit, to see the exhibit, to be able to gauge, as I said, we're a young country. How far have we come? How far have we? So we have something that's attached to each panel called Seeing Through the Democratic Lens. So you're going to be reading something about something from the past, and then that Democratic lens at the bottom of that panel is going to project something that's happening right now. And you will be able to make a determination, how far have we come? You know, what have our accomplishments been? Sometimes we see so much going on around us that it makes us think that we have not progressed. And that I'm standing here before you today tells you we have progressed. All right? We have progressed. So you will be experiencing this exhibit through a democratic lens. And in conclusion, I want to leave you with these words of the late, great congressman from Georgia, John Lewis, who said, "In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love, and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it is your turn to let freedom ring. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide." And I thank you so much for allowing me to be here today to share these words with you. And I'll take any questions or comments. And I also want to say I did bring some flyers. So if anyone wants flyers about the exhibit, and we also have a program going at the Cultural Center called The Art of Social Justice, which is specific to teachers, so that teachers can come and be culturally educated about what they can now go back and share with their students. So that flyer is available too. So if you have any questions. Yes.
Well, one second. I always do a little priming. We're noted for dialogue here, and dialogue means sharing and caring. Okay? But first, I want to again thank Gilda for increasing our awareness of history to help us navigate forward. So, two guidelines. First, be brief. If you have a lot to say, let's do it in chunks. Okay? Give everybody a chance to speak. And secondly, sometimes there's a topic that gets you kind of riled up. It happens. It's natural. What I ask you to do is take a deep breath. Think about how to express the question with care and humility, and then you're apt to get a more useful response. So I'll also suggest that having practiced this through my peacemaking, it's also helped me deal with challenges in the family. So these techniques are very worthwhile. And I think in some, it's about self-control. We don't want anybody to be stifled, but think about, how to ask your question to get maximum value. So Madhav will come around with the mic. Wait till he gets to you so we can all hear your question. So
I'd like to say too, before, I have a saying that is my saying that I made up. Let go of your ego and shake hands with peace. Because once you let go of that ego, you will shake hands with peace. You will. Our ego drives us to do unscrupulous things, and as Joe just told us, our ego is not mindful, right? It's not mindful. So let go of your ego and shake hands with peace, all right? That's my motto.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a question, and it's really...
Give your name, please.
What?
Please tell your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not Mahmoud. I'm a board member from the MCWRET. Okay. You started your statement, you said your grandmother had no profession. I think that statement is not accurate. All the grandmothers to this date have the most important profession in that society. And without them teaching, guiding, and sacrificing, we will not have had a society.
I stand to be corrected. I'm a big enough woman to accept that, you know, because you're right. I wouldn't be here had it not been for the sacrifices and everything that my grandmother did and what I learned from her. And I guess what I was trying to say, she was not able to go to college and ascend to that type of professionalism. But she was a professional, you're right. She was a professional when it came to taking care of the children and making sure that we had everything that we needed. It couldn't have been a better professional. Couldn't have been. Yeah, that's grandfather too.
Hi, I'm Gilda Mickey. How are you?
Good.
Question. I've always been curious, whatever happened to the Amsterdam News and to Ebony and to Jet? Were they absorbed by other magazines?
No, Amsterdam News is very much in existence. It exists online now. So you can go and access the Amsterdam News. You can go and access Ebony magazine. It exists online as well. I think Ebony and Jet were bought by, I don't know what corporation, but they're still in existence. They're just online. They live online now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jim.
Hi, Gilda. What would you recommend as sources, good sources of news today on what's going on in, things we might not get from the mainstream media about what's going on, particularly among the African American community?
I listen to a lot of, public broadcasts. NPR, PBS. Those are like what I listen to get information from that I feel as though is credible. I do watch MSNBC, but those are really I think public broadcast is the best route to go because they're not commodified, commercialized with, ads and things like that. So they're bringing you what's usually the real deal.
Thank you.
Someone in the back here, right in the back to your right.
Hi, I'm Christine Bonaco. I'm on the board of the Mama Center. To follow up on Jim's question, I wonder if you've listened much to WBAI radio. I think it's at 99.5, and if you've formed an opinion about their programming. I believe they call themselves Justice Radio, something along that line.
I have listened to WBAI. Yes, I have. The WBAI is one of those public broadcast stations, that they do have a show something about justice, absolutely, yeah.
If anybody has ideas to add to that list, please do that.
Yeah.
Well, hi, I'm Rick Goldberg. I don't have any ideas to add to that, but I have a different question. Social media and the internet and blogs. I remember when the internet was happening, and the great promise was it was going to make everybody, give everybody a voice. Everybody could be published. So now we see how things are unfolding. Is it a greater force for democracy? Is it an anti-democratic force? Is it too simple to say those questions? What's your take on the power and the peril of social media and blogs and self-publishing?
Social media in comparison to our mainstream media? Is that the question?
Just what it's doing for us or to us in our society today. Is it moving us towards democracy, away from democracy, both? Neither?
I would say if it's used responsibly, then it's moving us towards democracy. I've been on social media and I've gotten things that I've referred to from social media that have been valid and useful. So it has its place, but just like anything else, it has its downside too. So I would say you can't, I wouldn't base my resources, so to speak, if I'm doing research work, necessarily on something I saw on social media, all right? But I do think that social media, particularly for a person like myself who's running the T. Thomas Fortune Cultural Center, it serves me because I need to send that information out to let people know, and educators and students, what we're doing at the Cultural Center and events like the exhibit that's opening at the Cultural Center. So in that sense, you can get valid information from social media. You can. But I mean, you have to scrutinize it. There's certain things I'm sure that you might not read because of whatever the reason. It's the same thing. You have to scrutinize it and see, is this really something that can be useful to me? All right? And if not, it's here to stay. So we use it in a way that promotes positive change. That's the place I'm coming from with social media. And it can be used, and we know how it can be used, so we stray away from that.
Yeah, I'm Eddie Jan, an advisor to the board. I have a question about the powerfulness of the black press. So through the last 10 to 15 years as a journalist, have you seen more influence of the black press, or has it been kind of not increasing?
Well, we have to understand that the black press, there are outfits, that we had, it's a degree of. It's different organizations that are specific to the black press, all right? But the black press, in my perspective, was much more powerful as a collective during T. Thomas Fortune's time, all right? Now, we see the black press is been integrated into the mainstream press, right? So, still, in mainstream media, there's not that balance, that should be there, because it's not enough different cultures and voices to tell these stories, right? So the black press, to me, is not as powerful today as it was years ago. And I'm hoping, it is my hope, that with this exhibit, that we, black journalists, students, black, white, and otherwise, will get into the power of the press, and how important their voices are to be represented there, so that those stories can be told more truthfully and honestly about every segment of the population. You go into a newsroom, you probably would be surprised at the people of color that you see in a newsroom. And I mean that because there's still, even in our education campuses, we still don't have enough people of color who are standing before our students, giving them a different perspective. So, I don't know if I answered your question, but I don't think the black press has the power. It doesn't have, we have someone named Byron Allen now, who is really trying to make some headway into that arena, so to speak, but nothing has come out of that yet. But he seems to have the capital to do it, and so that remains to be seen. If something like that, what I described from the press from many, many years ago, during the time of T. Thomas Fortune, and when I'm talking about T. Thomas Fortune and the black press during that time, I'm talking about during the Gilded Age, because this is when that synergy all kind of coalesced and came together. And we know the Gilded Age lasted from like the 1870s into the early 1900s. And we're talking about the Gilded Age, we're talking about the Industrial Revolution and those very wealthy families, the Vanderbilts, the Astors, you know, Rockefellers. What were black people doing then? What were they doing? This is what they were doing. They were organizing, because then T. Thomas Fortune, he started the National Afro-American League. Charles Johnson, who had a newspaper, all right, the Opportunity. He started the Urban League. You have all of these publications from the Gilded Age by black people, journalists, who also have an activist arm associated with it, all right? Pushing for political and economic and social justice. We don't see that now. At least I don't see it in the astounding way that it was then, during the Gilded Age. When I say they unleashed a tidal wave of activism on America, that is what they did. All of these, Du Bois had the NAACP, all right? You have Randolph that's fighting for black workers, all right? And most people don't know, it is because of A. Philip Randolph that the 1963 March on Washington happened. He proposed that back in the 30s and 40s, when he was fighting to have the military industry integrated, when he was fighting to have the military armed forces itself integrated. And he threatened both Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Harry S. Truman. If they did not integrate the military industry and the armed forces, he was going to have a march on Washington. So by the time we get to the 60s and we see what's going on then, he says, I think it's time now that we have this March on Washington. So this was always his idea. Most people associate the March on Washington because of Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, and they seem to think that Dr. King was the one that was like the architect of the March on Washington. It was not. A. Philip Randolph was the architect. He was the oldest speaker there that day, and John Lewis was the youngest speaker there that day.
I have a follow-up question on that subject. When we talk about the black press or the black media, historically and now, was it sort of targeted for the black audience? And at this point in time today,
So, it was targeted specifically for the black audience because black people were not covered in the white press, not unless it was for something derogatory. So to give us, our humanity and to know that, we get married, we have babies, we do all these things that, white people do, but the only time we're talked about in the white press is for things that are not, positive. But Fortune's newspaper at one time rivaled the New York Times, all right? Fortune was I tell people, if you want to know who Fortune really was, he was the Malcolm X of his day. So if you want to get some kind of idea of who this person, T. Thomas Fortune, was, that was his attitude. Pretty much he wanted us to come together, but he also knew Fortune's father was elected to the Florida Assembly during Reconstruction. Fortune worked as a Senate page at the age of 13. He was up close and personal to the nefarious workings of white politicians at the age of 13, which is a very impressionable age. This became his life's work. And like I said, his newspaper, many politicians feared Fortune. They were like, keep your pen off of me, Tom Fortune. Yeah, because he was deadly with it. All right, so language made a difference back then.
A couple of quick points. You still can get the Amsterdam news in paper print.
You can?
New York area. There was a store in Asbury Park, a corner store, that did carry it up until a couple years ago. So that is the thing. The second point, a couple of new black media startups. Roland Martin with Black Star Network. That's online. And National Action Network is another resource for real factual information because we're demonized. Black folks are only about 13–14% of the entire population. Other black and brown folks, another 13%. So when you see something about us, because we're demonized. That has been the media method from 1700 to present. The other thing we have to recognize, New Jersey is just as segregated as my home state of Mississippi. I think I say that every time I come here. Because the reflection of this room reflects how things actually work. It's one thing to want peace and neighborhoodship, but you have to get out there to reach out. Because if you want to know what's happening in the black community, you've got to be in the black community. And you have to be trusted allies. You also have to understand we are repeating history. We are actually living in the era of 1880s all over again, post-Reconstruction.
1880s, which is, taking it back to the Gilded Age.
Yes, Jim Crow started up because some white supremacists, white nationalists got upset because my people was doing things like making their own towns and communities and banks and schools. My grandfather taught at Prentice Institute down in Mississippi, Prentice, Mississippi back in the day. I come from a line of educators and property owners down in Mississippi back in the day. This is extremely segregated. We're repeating history. The folks got upset because our people had communities all over. There are several thriving communities that were wiped out in Mississippi. There's one, Mount Carmel, park on Highway 84 now. Banks and everything. So we have to understand that the Klan, I call the AKA, modern day Proud Boys, is the KKK of the day. They got upset because they were told those people are coming to get your stuff. They're coming to take your things. So we have to understand the context, and what you have to do is get outside of your comfort zone. And if the things that my people say to you get you upset, it's a good thing. That means you are having to realize things that you never had to bother with because if it didn't affect you.
But you know what? Let me say this. Young people, the students in my class, all right, they are so open.
Yes.
And wanting to receive this information because it's a young man in my class. He's white with this big curly red hair, and we were discussing the middle passage last Wednesday in class, and it's all its ugliness. And he said, these were his words, "All my life, I've grown up and learned about the Holocaust.
Yep.
I never learned about this." And viscerally, he was upset. And I understand why, because this is why. You know, that's why I said, they're learning each other now up close and in a personal way.
Yes.
And I tell them, what we talk about in this room stays in this room. What we learn goes out. All right? So what we talk about, but what you learn, you take it out there.
And those young people were the abolitionists of the day back then, in the 1830s, 1840s, 50s, 60s, 80s, 1800s. Those were the abolitionists. So that's all I just want to put my 2 cents.
Yeah.
While the microphone is moving, I'll add one thing. This is a difficult journey for all of us, and what we learned from our last Shanti speaker is it starts with creating a little comfort, but then ultimately you have to develop relationships. And I know what I'm trying to do in my church is predominantly white, but maybe 10% not white, so it's pretty more diverse than many. We're trying to establish relationship with a black church so that we can
share,
share pulpit, share bread, learn from each other. So Robert Jones, great voice today, white man who, Southern Baptist, who did a total conversion, studying the history of the white church in this country and all the things it did. But the objective is to learn in order to transcend. This is a step in that direction.
Yeah, I agree.
This is kind of a follow-up to what you're saying. The main thing for any group to be reckoned with and understood is that they have to keep their own culture and learnings within their own communities. I can give an example. I'm from Egypt originally, and in Cairo, there was at one time, a trend coming that people want to learn English, being a good language and all that kind of stuff. And what the parents did, they took their kids out of the classrooms. They taught them at home the real Egyptian culture and refused to send them back to schools until the schools stopped this nonsense. And that's the only way that a group can protect their identity when it's trying to be stolen or being made not important
or dismissed.
Or exactly.
And
I would like to see at one time that in this country, the black people make it a point to teach their kids their own history, not necessarily in school, It's not going to come in school. Schools will not do that kind of stuff. Only families and the group itself can bring it, teach it, and live it.
That is true. And I have to say, in many black families, that we don't know our own history. We don't know our own history because that history has been basically through, you know, was erased.
And why aren't black people taking that on their own hands and making sure that this is what the kids learn, and only that's what they learn?
I am. Yeah. You know, I went to school so I could teach history because that is how we know ourselves, we get to know ourselves, and people get to know us. This country started black and white, all right? I learned a lot of white European history in my years of growing up in America. I think the only thing I learned about myself was Dr. George Washington Carver and Dr. King and Harriet Tubman, all right? Now, my people, my caretakers, my grandmothers, they're sending me to school thinking, you know, I'm going to learn.
That is the point I'm trying to make. I mean, you're saying she's a teacher, yes, but that's not enough.
When they have not, my people, I'm talking about my own immediate family,
right?
All right? When they were not educated, they had to work in the fields to take care of their families, all right? You know, they might go to school a couple months, and then the rest of the time, they had to work in the fields. And so, you know, it's easy for us, and now, here we are. You know, it was no such thing as African American history to study. That didn't even come about until, like, I'm gonna tell you, in the mid to late 70s, it started showing up in curriculums in public schools and on college campuses. But until then,
the only thing I want to add is in the home with the children, the infants, the toddlers, there are the grandparents, and their role is to instill on them their own culture. When you do this at a massive level, you don't need the school to do this. You don't have to rely on the school to do this because they will never do it.
No, I know my culture. I'm very aware of my culture, and I learned that as a child from my people. You know,
that's good. That's the way it goes.
Of black culture, all right? But I'm talking about the academic side of it, no. But the culture side, yes.
I actually see a bit of a resurgence, or maybe it's even newer. Basically, there are a lot of books that have been written in the last 5 or 10 years about this particular history that was not well written and not known. The book I will recommend, if you're going to read one book, is the book Caste, C-A-S-T-E. I mean, I read that only to realize the level of my ignorance. So we can teach ourselves, and I guess another lesson is we shouldn't look to the black community to educate us. We need to educate ourselves and then learn how to be partners with the black community to make this nation a better nation for all of us.
And continue to learn from one another. You know, it was Supreme Court Justice John Marshall Harlan, all right, who was the lone dissenter in the 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson. He was the only one who did not go along with the other Supreme Court justices. And he said, because the black and white races are inextricably linked together for life. This was a man who used to own slaves, all right? but came to understand at some point in his life that this was not the way for this country to go, separate but equal. That was a joke, all right? That's how all of this, just imagine if during Reconstruction, when black people were said to be able to get 40 acres and a mule. Imagine if that had happened. If all black people who had been formerly enslaved or families had been given the 40 acres and a mule, we wouldn't be having this conversation probably right now. All right?
And they should have taken it by force.
There's Malcolm X.
I have a two-part question. One is a follow-up to the previous one. So, do I understand right that the influence and the effect of the black press has not increased after the Thomas Fortune? It has rather decreased. And secondly, are there other centers like T. Thomas Fortune Center in the country?
No, we're it. This was the home he lived in. He lived here. He lived in Red Bank from 1901 to approximately 1911. So this location was once his home. So
no, what I mean, with other names, are there any centers like this?
Like the home of Du Bois. Like a Du Bois or Louis Latimer, who was a great scientist, who actually visited Fortune at this home in Red Bank. Louis Latimer, most people don't know. We think Thomas Edison created the light bulb, which he did on some level, but Louis Latimer is the one who created the filament so it could stay lit. Who learned that in school? When we're learning about Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, all right? Louis Latimer, all of these people, T. Thomas Fortune, Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, Charles Chestnut, Walter White, I could go on and on. Ida B. Wells, Victoria Earl Matthews, Marianne Shad Carey. It's a great show on PBS about an African-American woman named Charlotta Spears Bass, who was a newspaper publisher. She was the first woman newspaper publisher in the United States in 1912, the California Eagle, all right? She ran for vice president in 1952, all right? So through that Democratic lens that I'm talking about, you'll see, when you see the exhibit, she never was elected to vice president status, but now we see Kamala Harris, who now lived out Charlotta Bass Spears, idea to be a political figure and leader in this nation. Oh, Patty, you have the microphone.
Therefore, Patty White, I'm on the board here, and I would like to add Robert Abbott to your list of journalists.
Yeah, Robert Abbott, Robert Van, Robert Abbott from the Chicago Defender.
But I guess I have more of a comment because I like how the whole concept of these waves of activism, with T. Thomas Fortune and all of that, and the civil rights movement in the 60s, and then now we're in Black Lives Matter. But honestly, and I don't have to probably tell you this, for some folks, it's a trend, it's a fad. And I'm of the belief that, well, we all know there's myriad forms of prejudice and racism, not here, just here in the country, in the whole world. There's just so much. But I'm of the belief that if we can resolve this issue,
this black and white issue which is embedded in our culture, that will be the means to resolve everything else.
Exactly. We got to get past the race issue.
That's all I have to say.
We got to get past that. It was no. It was this, before you Teresa, it was this woman back here in the back.
Yeah, I won't do that. I want to say one thing. We have 5-minute warning to.
Okay. 5-minute warning.
Okay. He's doing his job.
Double duty. I have a good team.
He's doing his job, yeah.
My name is Vee, and I really want to bring some attention to a very important thing. Although, seen against the background of everything that's going on, it doesn't seem that important. But I would like to see more organization or more emphasis on school boards. I think that is the basic starting point if we want our children to have a broader knowledge on racial matters. Because a lot of books are being banned, restricted. So if children of color go to school, what the heck do they learn? They're only going to learn a certain type of education because other parents does not want their children to feel uncomfortable. But we have to go that route. So every time I speak to mothers of color, I said, run for school board, or at least come to parent-teacher meetings so that we can push back. There's not enough pushback as to who has access and what kind of things are being taught to our children. That upsets me really greatly.
No, you're right. You are 100% right. You know, I talk to my students, and now I said I had a class of 33 students, and this is why I said I feel hopeful about the future, because I asked all of them. I said, how many of you here vote? All of their hands went up with the exception of about 7 or 8 students. So then I was impressed because I didn't expect that many hands to go up. So it was said to me, they're listening, you know, and hopefully they will be the ones that join these school boards. I tell them that's where it starts first too. Join your school board. The last class I taught, I had them go out and sit at a council meeting. You know, you got to get involved in your local community, from school boards, council, zoning, all of these things that makes the community or your town run. You need to know what's going on and show up, you know, so you are in tune. At least show up if you're not going to join, but you should be trying to involve yourself in that way as well as joining a board. You're right.
I would also add is I think this nation is in a huge struggle right now. In other words, things were going this way for long, all of a sudden there was a battle, and when there's a battle, the counter forces come in, and right now I think we're having a mighty struggle. So the more people on the right side, the better. That's the one thing I could.
Right. Students are involved. You know, students are getting involved. Students that I know that I've met and confronted, because I'm always pushing that kind of information to them. Because this is your world. This is the world that you're inheriting. All right? What are you going to do about it? You know, they've accepted a lot of things as normal.
Is our time up? One more?
Anybody else? No.
A short closing comment, please.
Okay. One quick point of history for the young ladies that you say you're from Egypt.
Yes, I am.
I, unfortunately, can't tell that history. I was born in America. My ancestors came here 1800s, 1700s. If you're black in America, you don't know your culture of origin other than your skin color because we were stripped of that. I also am a Cherokee Choctaw person, but my Native Indigenous people's history was wiped out by paper genocide. My people were forbidden, my indigenous people, if you were intermarried or intermingled with the African, you were dismissed out of your group. The government wrote us out of our nativeness by paper genocide. They went down the list where the Caucasian, white, Negro, indigenous, Native, whatever you want to call it, that threw in Chinese and Eastern Indian. They just made you white or colored. That's, wait, let me finish. The only reason I know...
I crossed all of this.
No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. The only reason I know my African DNA is because my family and we did our blood DNA. So I was only able to get broad Western Africa, North Africa, British France, Norway, that indigenous Cherokee Choctaw. If you're black in America, that is our history. Our culture was wiped out. Native children were forbidden to speak their language. African folks that were brought here on slave ships were forbidden to speak their language and encompass their culture. That is the reality of American history. You may not understand, you may not get it, but that is what it is. That's all I'm going to say.
Sid, did you have something to say?
I'm thinking, and I feel it's almost futile what's going on here.
Futile?
Yeah,
Futile.
We should be past.
We should.
About Randolph and WEB.
If we had had an educational system that was inclusive.
Yes.
If we had had an educational system that had been inclusive of Randolph and those people, yeah, but it has not been. You know, Sid, you know it hasn't been.
I think what's happening right now in America is dangerous.
True.
We're being taken over by extremists.
True. But we have to fight back. We have to fight back.
And all the books isn't going to help. We got to do something more active.
Yeah, we have, like the black press. They were activists. They activated a movement and it changed things, all right? So now we have to be as diligent as activists today. I don't care what role, how small, how little, how big, you have to be doing something. You have to be doing something and involved in something to counter what it is that we see happening.
Right.
If you're just going home and sitting on your couch and watching television, you know, after a day's work, then that's not going to get it. You know, you're excused, Sid, because I know you've done the work. You've done the work. I've witnessed it, all right? So now, just like one of your favorite people, Congressman Lewis, is saying, it's up to others now. He's done everything. You did all that you could do, right? Now other people have to step up and we have to keep fighting to get the society that we envision, all right? As I said, America is a young country compared to other countries that have existed in antiquity, all right? So now, you know, yes, I like to think that we should be beyond race right now, but we know education has played a major role in that from the earliest days of enslaved people not being able to read and write, to be illiterate, and all of that. So we're still growing up. We're still growing up as as a society. And it still takes a lot of work. Still takes a lot of work.
I appreciate your optimism.
Yes.
And I love you for that.
I know. That's why I love you too, Pumpkin. You know I do.
So, as a young country, I would probably make it analogous to a teen out of control. And I don't mean that so much to be funny.
Right.
But the history is grim, and the present is challenging, but the future is not yet written.
Right.
So,
You have to write it.
That was beautiful, Joe.
So let's give it
Thank you very much.
I have 3 pieces of paper for her. One of them she better not lose.
Okay, I won't. I promise.
And a few closing words. So thank you to the UU for, again, being a gracious host and providing us with a place that we can do the best we can.
Yeah.
Thank you to the Chada family.
Thank you.
Thanks for participating. Thanks clearly for making this really happen. Thanks to the Mama Center and the team for making the Shanti program happen. A lot of hands make for light work. And lastly, we appreciate the audience, not only for being here and participating, but take what you learn and do something with it, right?
Yeah. Take it out
Thank you,
there.
Joe, also.
Yes.
Does anybody have any brief announcements that might need to be made?
Jimmy Carter's 99th birthday today.
Really? Oh, wow.
He's only 7 years old.
Jimmy Carter.
Oh, okay. Patty?
Well, in the interest of keeping the conversation going,
The monthly Red Bank Library, Let's Talk About Race, October 25th, so the last Wednesday of the month. We're still on Zoom until we're working on getting back in person. Rick Gefke will be doing another program on reparations. So this is an ongoing conversation that we want to keep nurturing, and so please look on the Red Bank website, or you'll get an email from me, and thank you.
So everybody's invited to go into the outdoor store, go to the left for some food and refreshments, an opportunity to continue the conversation with Gilda or with any of us or with each other. Share your ideas, team up to do something. It's a heck of a lot easier to do something if you're not doing it alone. And if you're not on our email invitation list, you know, there's a little sign-up sheet that somebody can collect your email address. You only get a handful of emails a year for events such as this. There's other literature for the Mama Center there, and you will also find a copy of the T. Thomas Fortune brochure. And a question for you: if people want to visit the T. Thomas Fortune Foundation, when is it open, or how do they?
It's open Saturdays and Sundays from 1 to 5.
Okay, so, and I have been there. It's a wonderful experience. And again, step 1 is to learn. Step 2 is to act.
Come see the exhibit. It's going to be great. Yeah.
And I guess lastly, I'll ask Christine to escort Gilda to make sure she gets first to the food, because otherwise too many people are going to grab her. So we try to treat our honored speakers well.